the crackling flames, the suffocating smoke, and the sight of someone tied helplessly to a stake, the punishment of burning alive was more than just a death sentence. It was a message of terror, a public spectacle meant to sear itself into the memories of all who witnessed it. Imagine standing in a crowd, the heat on your face as the fire roars, while a victim's cries of agony pierce the air. This was no ordinary execution, it was a calculated performance of fear, cruelty, and power. In this video, we will uncover the most infamous cases of burning at the stake, where every detail, from the selection of the wood to the timing of the fire, was designed to prolong suffering and strike fear into the hearts of those who dared to oppose authority. Stay with us. What you are about to hear will reveal the darkest depths of medieval justice and humanity's capacity for horror. How victims were prepared for burning. Burning at the stake, a punishment that evokes visceral horror, was more than just a method of execution, it was a ritual designed to instill fear and enforce societal norms. Victims, often accused of heresy, witchcraft, or other grave sins, were typically subjected to a degrading procession to the execution site. Stripped of their dignity and clothed in simple garments to mark their shame, they were paraded through jeering crowds. The hands of the condemned were frequently bound, and in some cases, they were gagged to prevent last-minute declarations or curses. At the stake itself, meticulous preparations were made. Wooden stakes were erected in the center of a prearranged pyre, typically surrounded by bundles of kindling and straw for quick ignition. Historical records, such as those by Jean Froissart, describe how chains or iron collars were used to secure the victim to the post. This ensured they would not escape as the fire consumed them. Why fire was chosen? Fire carried deep symbolic significance in both religious and cultural contexts, making it the preferred method of execution for perceived sins against God or society. Theologians believed fire had a purifying quality, as referenced in the Bible. For our God is a consuming fire, Hebrews 12:29. By burning the condemned, their physical bodies were destroyed in a way that symbolized the eradication of their sins. Practically, fire was also an accessible and visually dramatic means of execution. It ensured a slow, agonizing death, maximizing its deterrent effect. Unlike beheading, which was over in moments, burning prolonged the suffering, forcing spectators to confront the consequences of defiance or moral transgression. Moreover, fire left little to bury, denying the victim a proper burial, a fate that carried spiritual ramifications in medieval society. Survival time. The time it took for a victim to die during a burning at the stake varied based on several factors, including the type of wood, the presence of accelerants, and the placement of the flames. Typically, victims succumbed within 15 to 30 minutes if the fire was hot and well constructed. However, in cases where wetwood was used or the flames were kept low, the process could stretch for hours. Historical records describe the agonizing process in detail. Victims often inhaled thick smoke, leading to asphyxiation before the flames caused fatal burns. In some instances, executioners attempted to hasten death by placing gunpowder pouches around the neck or beneath the arms, which would explode when exposed to heat, killing the victim instantly. For example, the English Protestant martyrs Hugh Latimer and Nicholas Ridley, burned in 1555, suffered prolonged deaths due to poorly constructed fires, with onlookers recording their agonized cries in vivid detail. Most famous cases in medieval times. Among the most notable was the execution of Joan of Arc in 1431. The French heroine was accused of heresy and sorcery by the English after claiming divine visions and leading French forces to critical victories in the Hundred Years' War. After a highly biased trial, Joan was tied to a stake in Rouen marketplace. Wetwood was deliberately used to create a slow-burning fire, prolonging her agony. Witnesses reported her cries of Jesus echoing above the flames, leaving many in the crowd in tears. Her ashes were scattered in the Seine River to prevent her becoming a martyr. Another infamous case is that of Jan Hus, a Czech reformer burned in 1415. Hus was condemned for challenging the Catholic Church's authority, criticizing practices such as indulgences. At his execution, green wood was piled around him to produce thick smoke, suffocating him before the flames consumed his body. Huss reportedly sang hymns as he was burned, his final defiance inspiring his followers to revolt, leading to the Hussite Wars. The Würzburg and Bamberg witch trials of the early 17th century were deeply rooted in medieval attitudes. Hundreds of victims, many of them women, were tortured into confessing witchcraft before being burned alive. Fires were often constructed to burn slowly, prolonging their suffering, while the screams of victims served as a grim reminder of the consequences of dissent. Richard Weish, a priest executed for heresy in 1440 on Tower Hill, met a horrifying fate for spreading Lollard teachings inspired by John Wycliffe. Tied to a stake, he faced a fiery death as a crowd watched. The flames consumed him slowly, an agonizing end meant to terrify dissenters. His unyielding faith and refusal to recant, even as the fire rose, turned his death into a symbol of defiance against church corruption, inspiring future reformers. Each of these cases underscores the terrifying nature of burning at the stake, an act not only of punishment but also of psychological warfare, ensuring the horror lingered in the minds of all who witnessed it. Public reaction in the Middle Ages. Burnings at the stake were deliberately public events, intended to instill fear and demonstrate the authority of rulers and the church. Crowds often gathered in the thousands, treating executions as both a solemn moral lesson and a form of macabre entertainment. Vendors sold food and trinkets, turning these events into carnivals of cruelty. Reactions, however, varied. Some onlookers expressed horror, particularly when the condemned showed signs of innocence or piety. Accounts of Joan of Arc's execution mention witnesses weeping openly as she prayed aloud. Others, hardened by years of such spectacles, viewed the condemned with indifference or even scorn. Despite the intended purpose of deterring dissent, public executions occasionally backfired. The death of Jan Hus, for instance, galvanized his followers, sparking the Hussite Wars. Similarly, the brutality of witch trials in places like Salem, Massachusetts, led to widespread criticism and eventual reforms. Burning at the stake was not just a method of execution, it was a deliberate act of cruelty, designed to strip victims of dignity while showcasing the power of those in control. From Joan of Arc's suffocating cries in the flames to the prolonged suffering of Nicholas Ridley, these cases show how this punishment was engineered to be as terrifying as possible. Beyond the physical agony, the psychological torment inflicted on both the victims and the witnesses ensured that the fear of dissent burned as brightly as the flames. What horrifies you the most, was it the slow, deliberate suffering, the inescapable fate of the accused, or the fact that these events were public spectacles meant to entertain and terrify? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more insights into history's darkest moments. Together, we will continue to uncover the brutal truths of the past.